What's up, gamers? Welcome to Battle Mallet Podcast Episode 21, Hex Ed, Flies Spread Diseases. You're coming along with us on a journey delving into the minds of four busy gamers, their annual trip to the Nova Open Convention, playing games that they love, and balancing life with those games. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm here with Trace Hyde.
What's up?
That was not quite long enough. And Jason Tabled New Murray.
Good evening, you infested people.
Yeah. So Jason came up with the subtitle for our episode, and I feel like it needs to be completely laid out. And this is just, your public service announcement that, Jason, how did it go? Fly spread diseases.
So keep yours closed.
There we go. So in this episode, Hex Ed, we're going to be spending all of our time talking about Warhammer Underworlds. I've gotten some reps in with the Wurmspat. Trace has got some reps in with Wurmspat Mantrappers. Jason has been playing anything and everything under the sun.
Yep.
True statement.
So we'll spend the entirety of the episode kind of going through our experiences with those warbands, what we like about them, what we don't, where we think they can succeed. But before we do that, we want to catch up with everyone. So what's everybody been up to, Trace?
Finishing these darned ogres.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm really, really close to being done. I've just got a couple more details to do on the Tyrant and the Scrap Launcher. Or not the Scrap Launcher, the Iron Blaster. And then I am finito. And
Sweet.
Jared and I can play some games.
Mm-hmm.
/ I can play them in Warcry now.
That's right, yeah. Warcry.
Warcry.
Aren't they broken in Warcry?
I don't know. I mean, they're beefy in Warcry, as you would expect ogres to be.
Yeah. I'm under the impression that basically everything except for the Warcry specific warbands are broken in one way or another.
It's probably true.
I mean, I haven't played against anything other than Warcry warbands.
I did watch
Warcry warbands. So
I did watch a Warcry battle report the other day that did actually today while I was painting while my son was taking a nap that had the Corvus Cabal versus the new Beastmen with 3 Minotaurs and a bunch of Ungor Raiders.
Oh yeah.
And the Corvus Cabal won that.
Oh, nice.
So I think it's just as much about like any other game where the pilot is part of it. So
yeah, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Other than that, been playing some games, like you said. Been playing some games with the Wurmspat Mantrappers. Really digging them. Lots of objective destruction shenanigans in my particular list, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah. Sweet. Cool.
Jason, what you been doing?
Everything. Oh, in the hobby, you mean? So I've just been assembling a lot. Some may see on the social media. At some point today, I had a lapse in willpower and purchased all the new releases for Crisis Protocol, a game that I have yet to get on the table. But I've assembled, Venom, Hulk. I assembled the Spire Tyrants for Warcry.
Sweet.
Those models are awesome. Like those pit fighter veterans, like they are pretty sweet. Can't wait to get them on the table. Assembled Nurgle, Mantrapper, and what's that big beastie thing too?
Oh, the Ogroid Myrmidon?
Yeah. Might have done that last episode. That was the first one that I assembled. I can't recall now. But other than that, been playing a lot of Underworlds, TTS, and Vassal. Played a lot of, still on the lady train. Unfortunately, that dirty Lady Mournflight. Played Darok in the TTS League. I'm now 4-0, which the reason I bring that up is I have sucked against Wild Hunt, like just terrible against Wild Hunt. And I finally beat Wild Hunt with Lady Mournflight. Just, I guess their movement and the fact that he can do quick damage just was always behind the 8 ball. But that was a great game with him. Went to three rounds and a lot of like shenanigans, push me, push you, push this, move that. It was a great game. And then I made it into the playoffs here for the Vassal League. So excited to get that started hopefully this week. And then Jared and I went to Game Theory. What was it, a week ago? I
think so, yeah. So for context, it is February 17th.
Yes.
Yep.
And I got wrecked by Nurgle, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But more importantly, we had an amazing 4-player game because we don't often do those with Chad and his buddy. And I rocked the Iron Soul Condemners, just the straight like faction cards, and I had a lot of fun doing that. Jared?
Yeah, no, so Rob is Chad's friend's name. So it was Chad running
the spoilers.
Rob was running Grimwatch. You were running the all faction Condemners deck, and I was running the all faction Nurgle deck. And yeah, no, that was. Yeah, I mean, we don't often play multiplayer games, and I had forgotten just how, like, zany and fun that can be to just not be in tryhard mode, but to just play a game for the sake of playing it and enjoying it. So that was good. So we did that, and then I have been painting a lot lately, but a lot of little stuff. So I finished a chaplain. Inspired by the Psychic Awakening, so Terminator Chaplain for the Grey Knights. I guess we're how many months out from Nova? 6 months out from Nova? 5 months out from Nova?
September would be 7 months.
No, that math is wrong.
It's September.
No, from the last one.
Oh.
5 months.
I don't know. 5 months.
Yeah.
I thought you were like out from the new one.
No.
Like...
So anyway, at the Games Workshop preview at Nova 2019, we all got a Canonist figure, and I assembled that and painted that for my brother, and that was a nice little exercise doing something different. And then I just this afternoon finished my Wurmspat, or have them to a finished standard. There's more work that could be done to them, but there are no places where there is not paint.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's more highlighting that could be done, or more layering that could be done, but there's nowhere that there are not at least 2 layers of paint.
What about her eyeball? Are you sure?
Yes, I'm. You would bring that up. So anyone that has assembled Olfacula Flyblown knows that the majority of her face is covered by her crown and her hair. And anyone that is following us on social media knows that I commented about how I enjoy the fact that the Underworlds miniatures are push fit, because it more easily allows me to paint in sub-assembly, which is not something that I have normally done. Well, while painting in sub-assembly, I noticed that because of the different pieces that her head and face were in, it was easy for me to pull her face apart and spend time on her face. So making sure that like the shading around her nose was good, and that I really like painted her tongue and painted her teeth, and that her lips were a noticeably different color from the rest of the skin on her face. And I actually spent time on her eye, which is something that I hate painting, and I'm sure many other people hate painting: eyes, eye lenses, all of these things. So I go in there, I put on the base coat, I do 1 layer of highlight, I even do like a spot highlight that would be like a reflective, like her eye is like slimy or shiny or whatever, and then I put her back together, and unless the model is 6 inches from your face, you cannot see her eye at all.
Time well spent.
Yep. Yeah. So But I'm looking at it right now, and it looks really good when you flip her model upside down and really look for her eye.
Shine some light in there.
And you flip it and reverse it like you're trying to catch flies.
Yes, just like that. So that's hobby-wise, and then game-wise, just been trying to get reps in with the Wurmspat. So I've played a variety of games. Played against Thundrix Profiteers, played against Yelthari's Guardians, played against
Don't you talk about my Guardians like that? Don't you?
I just said that I played against them. That's all I said. So I don't.
Was it even like playing? They folded like a wet noodle.
You said it, not me. Oh, good times. So I think I'm trying to look into my hobby closet from here. I think that's all I've done. Yeah, I think that rounds it out. So I haven't bought Crisis Protocol. So I'm not on that train. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's it. So Trace is still painting ogres.
Almost done.
Jason is hobby butterflying, warband butterflying. And I am painting 3 or less models at a time. It's a good world.
At least you're painting.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true. It's a good world to live in. Cool. Well, I think that rounds us out, right? I don't have anything else that I've done. You guys?
No.
Not particularly.
Cool. Well, I think I hear the class bell changing. So, right? It's seventh period is next.
It's time for.
You guys, we all have Hex Ed next, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll take a break here, and when we get back, we'll start Hex Ed.
Wear protection.
All right, class. Everybody in their seats.
Shut up, coach.
We gotta talk about stuff, Johnson.
I'm supposed. Ooh.
No, but welcome back. So Hex Ed, we have 2 new warbands dropped, a whole bunch of universal cards, and we want to chat about our first impressions and thoughts. The first warband that we were attracted to, as it often happens, is a 3-figure warband that's filled with pus and glory and disease and life and all things in between. And that is the Wurmspat, or the Nurgle warband. And these guys, they bring a unique play style to the game, and I'm glad that one of my counterparts has jumped all over them. So, Jared, how's it going with the wonderful Nurgles?
I am having a lot of fun.
Yes.
I didn't anticipate being the one to jump onto this warband. Given that I don't typically lean towards chaos, and even if I think about playing something that's related to chaos, Nurgle is probably the last one that I would play. But when they were announced and the community website gave some information about them, the initial reaction was like, oh, these guys are not very good. And I don't know what happened in my brain, but something happened. And I immediately went, well, I guess I'm just going to play them. And, and I don't know if I'm pulling a Jason and just looking for an excuse to perform poorly, or if I was tired of playing Wild Hunt, or what. But I just picked them up and said, I'm going to try to figure out how to make them work. And the games that I've won have been a ton of fun. The games that I've lost have been a ton of fun. And Jason, like you said, I think that they bring something to the game that has not existed yet. And that's a true kind of staying power for a warband. So to date, models stay around because either they have more hit points that can be gotten through, or they have better defense than can be gotten through. And in this case, I can't tell you the number of times I'm rolling a defense dice and I am wishing for a shield and not a crit.
This is true.
So for anybody that's not familiar, I imagine everyone is there. All of the fighters in the Wurmspat have an ability, and it says when this fighter is dealt damage by an attack action, reduce that damage by 1 to a minimum of 1 for each shield in the defense roll. And so we can kind of do a quick rundown. They all share a very similar stat line: uninspired, 3 move, 1 defense on shields, 4 health. Fecula hits for 2 smashes for 2 damage, and she's also a caster. Range 3, hits on focus for 1 damage. Golgotch the Butcher is 3 smashes for 2 damage, and then Sepsimus Plaguesworn is range 2, 2 smash for 2 damage. So, I mean, respectable stat lines, to be sure, but nothing really remarkable yet, other than Golgotch's starting accuracy of 3 hammers. Like, that's notable. But beyond that, they look just like any of your uninspired Steelheart's warbands.
Yeah, they're very Steelheart-esque.
Right. So it's that ability to reduce damage, which is key. And to give some insight on that, oftentimes your opponent will roll a crit and a hit. And when you're on 1 defense dice, for every other warband, there's nothing you can do about that.
Yes.
Correct.
With these guys, there's a 33% chance that you're just going to negate 1 point of damage. And when they're inspired, there's even hope if somebody rolls 2 crits and a success. And that's because you can always reduce the damage by 1 with 1 shield, or if you're looking at Golgotch or Sepsimus Inspired, where they now get to roll 2 defense dice, there's a chance that you could reduce the damage by 2 points. And the math on reducing the damage by 1 point is about 55%. So there's about a 55% chance that when you're rolling 2 defense dice, you're going to reduce the damage by 1, which I mean, it has been game changing in the games that I have played. So this is basically the equivalent of a light rebound every time you roll a defense dice, because an attack that should kill might not kill, or an attack that puts them within 1-shot range might not actually put them in 1-shot range. So it's been interesting to see that play out.
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed the games that I've got to watch you play this, and I'm intrigued by the play style. And you know, it's people often talk about the meta, right? Like like we're in a meta where you have 4 warbands and they're at the top, blah 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 blah. We've all heard that from everybody for so long, but this is why it's so important that every warband sees some sort of play through the game, because since season 1, like I have a Reaver, right? I have Sake. He's going to charge in. He's going to do 3 damage, and I have some sort of ploy in my hand that's going to do an additional damage, or I have an upgrade to make him do 4 damage. So if you can get this attack to go through, that fighter dies, right? So this whole warband's mechanic it's not a guarantee, and we often spend resources to guarantee something, or as best we can guarantee something happens, and that's why I like it. Like, you could have somebody spending Inspired Attack and Haymaker and Potion of Rage and be rolling 8 dice and be like, haha, you're done, I'm going to take out your leader. And next thing you know,
nope.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Right. Yeah, and let's be clear. It's far from guaranteed.
Yeah, no, it's far from. But that's why it's so crucial to the game.
Right, and they're the only ones that can do that. And I think that matters a lot. So yeah, so let's talk about inspired side. Right, so I already mentioned that Golgotch and Sepsimus, so the 2 kind of dangle bros, they go to 2 defense dice. They stay at move 3, still 4 health.
Quote unquote dangle bros.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I mean, they're dangle bros in the same way that Amos is a dangle bro, or Oberyn is a dangle bro. They're not the leader. So Golgotch keeps his 3 smash, 2 damage, but he gains cleave, which has won me games. And then Sepsimus, and I think he's the sleeper here. So he goes from range 2, 2 smash, 2 damage to range 2, 2 smash, 3 damage. But he also gets a 2 damage scything attack on 3 fury. So 3 swords scything attack. So they both get, decent accuracy. Septimus going to 3 damage is big. And then they both get the 2 defense. What's interesting is that Fecula also goes to 3 smash for 2 damage. But her spell attack action, the Stream of Corruption, changes to channels. So this is the first channel-based on-fighter attack action that we've seen in the game. When she's inspired, the damage does stay at 1. But as we'll talk about later, I have found that killing things with her is not necessarily your goal. But she gets a very accurate attack, especially if you can get Well of Power on her, or Haymaker, or Potion of Rage, where she's rolling 3 or 4 or 5 dice for channels. That's a very accurate attack. But she does, in fact, stay at 1 shield on defense. So, she's kind of got the downside there.
But she is a wizard.
She is a wizard.
So you can do what?
I mean, there's lots that you can do with her. You put an Eldritch Ward on her. You can put Yara's shield.
Yara's instant shield.
Yep. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's not like she's helpless in that 1 shield defense, for sure, which is a great point.
So, it's my observation from you playing them is that the quote-unquote dangle bros, like Septimus, seems to do some work with his range. Like, he can get in there and get people going. But really, the key is her with that 3 range, 1 damage. You want to plink everybody to get everybody inspired.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So let's go back. That's a good point, Jason. Let's talk about the inspire mechanic. So they inspire when 3 or more enemy fighters are any combination of out of action or have 1 or more wound tokens. So I could have 3 fighters with 1 wound token each. I could have 3 enemy fighters out of action, or any combination thereof. As long as that happens, they're inspired. So there are differing thoughts on how to make this happen, how to inspire your fighters. And I have been a fan of plinking damage in order to inspire. And so that means including things like Lethal Ward, Encroaching Shadow, the new card Collapse, these cards that are either ploys or gambits. So like Sphere of Action is another great one, since she starts as a level 2 caster, where you can get your fighters inspired before you engage, or have them be inspired, immediately after engaging. Say you can damage 2 fighters and then charge in with a third to damage a third fighter, ideally with Golgotch, since he's got that sweet accuracy, uninspired. And then now he's in the middle of everything, but he's inspired on 2 defense dice.
So I know you've tried how many different iterations of decks? Like, where did you start? Like, when you first look at them? Well, let me back up a little bit. So when you look at Nurgle, what do we think of Nurgle, right? We think of resilient, right? Like, that's what historically they've been through the fiction is very resilient. So you have that with the shield, you have that with the wounds. They've been considered slow, although some would argue in 40K they're not so slow, right, Trey?
Correct.
Yeah, there's shenanigans for scooting them along the battlefield in both Age of Sigmar and in 40K.
So
yeah, you can scoot them along just fine.
But they're supposed to stand there and just take a beating and spread their love and disease to everyone. So when you first looked at this warband, and I think we all did, we're like, oh man, they're hot garbage. Where did you start? Like, what was your first initial pass?
Yeah, so the first pass was just a wild swing and a miss. But I figured it was going to be worth a shot just to give it a try. So they have an in-faction objective called Trilobe, and it is a supremacy clone. So it is score 3 glory in an in phase if you hold 3 or more objectives. So I think the first, 2 or 3 games I played with them, I tried to run Trilobe and Supremacy and Temp Victory. So just trying to get them on and keep them on objectives. And there's tech out there to do that. So you've got Survival Instincts, which is the upgrade that's been around, so you're on guard. Buried Instincts is the new ploy that you play during an attack action that gives your fighter a guard token. So you could move on to an objective and then wait for the attack and then eat the attack, and you'll still be on the objective as long as you're still alive. They have an in-faction push 2 fighter ploy, which is great. There's 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, which is great for getting fighters kind of where you need them to be. But the reality is, with the 3-fighter warband, and basically everyone knows this now, or you should. If you don't know this, then listen to me. If you have 3 fighters, do not try to hold 3 warbands or 3 objectives. It's because you will inevitably lose one. And now, if you have Trilobe and Supremacy and Temporary Victory in your hand, that's 3 dead objective cards and 8 total glory, just completely removed from your objective deck. So probably not the way to go. But I thought I wanted to try it just to make sure that it was in fact a bad idea. And it was in fact a bad idea. So after that,
but the faction cards kind of led you there, right? Like,
right, yeah. So looking at the faction cards, so you've got
those, and
you've got so you've got the whole 3 objectives. You've got everybody's inspired, so you want to be doing some damage. So Nurgle's Garden Grows is another in-faction objective. Score. It's a hybrid. It's an end phase, and it's it's denial / hold more. So it's 2 glory. Screw in the 3rd end phase if there are no enemy fighters in your territory, or your warband holds more objectives than each opposing warband. So that makes it look like you want to be on objectives. They have a score immediately if your friendly fighter is holding an objective and is the target of an attack action and is not driven back if that survivor survives. So that's where Buried Instincts comes into play. That's where Survival Instincts comes into play, or just making someone miss an attack. Those are all great things. Spread His Blessings is scoring an end phase if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory. So again, there's another in-faction objective to be on objectives. And then they have Score This in the 3rd end phase if no friendly fighters are out of action. So that's another 3 glory end phase, 3rd end phase objective. So it looks like the design space was around keeping them alive and having them hold objectives. And so that's kind of the route that I went. And I'm not sure that holding 3 objectives is the way to go, mostly because if a warband wants one of your fighters dead, it's going to happen. Like
correct.
there's not, I don't think that there's any effective way to not already be winning and make it so that none of your fighters can be taken out of action. So holding 3 objectives did not work. So from there, I kind of ditched all of that. To be honest, I kind of went to the hive mind and looked at what other people were talking about, what they were doing. So Wigglefish, aka Jonathan Davis from Well of Power, Path to Glory podcast, put a deck together that I am kind of tweaking, kind of working on. So that's like one iteration, and it works a little differently. So the idea behind it is that I am worried about having glory that is easy to score on my own, that doesn't require me to necessarily be in a specific place, but everything else in the deck is designed to keep you from doing what it is that you want to do. And whether that's killing my guys or being on objectives. So easy to score things. Branching Fate. So it's just easy surge because at some point all of the fighters are going to be rolling 3 dice. And I think I have yet to not score this card at some point, between the ability to have rerolls or just rolling 3 dice lots of time. Scorched Earth, because you can put Abathos Unmaking and leave nothing to chance. Strong Start. It's unless you're looking at the third activation phase, it's not likely that I will be the first one to go out. Unexpected pitfall. So this is taking somebody out with either a ploy or in a lethal hex. So, and I've got all of this blink stuff in there to kind of help me with that. So bold conquest is the only one that really requires me to be in a specific place. So bold conquest is a surge objective if your leader makes a charge and is holding an objective. And that's really it. And then, so the only one, and this is one, Jason and you've talked about this, that, I may or may not like is Sorcerer's Volley. And as long as you can do things right with Fecula, I think this one's works. So score immediately after the same friendly fighter's second or subsequent spell attack action in this phase that targets the same enemy fighter. So the attack doesn't have to land. It just has to target the same fighter. And that's where her spell always being 1 damage comes into play. So, she can kind of hang back, and she could attack a 2-wound fighter, hit them both times, and still be able to score this.
Well, for that card, you don't even need to hit them. You just have to target
Right.
them.
Yeah, exactly. So, that makes it even easier. So those are the surges. And then the end phase, I've got catching up because we've talked about this, but there's kind of a slow and purposeful vein to this warband. And they don't mind going second. So if you let your opponent go first and they get 1 glory ahead of you before you score, you can score catching up. Or even if they're like 2 or 3, well, you're going to narrow that gap before you continue to score everything else that you have. Fired up, I felt like is kind of a no-brainer. I think at some point 3 enemy fighters are going to be damaged based on my ploys. Team effort is a newer card, so that's scoring an end phase if there are 2 more surviving friendly fighters and each surviving friendly fighter made 1 or more actions in the previous phase. Well, that's easy. These guys are either going to be moving, charging, attacking, or going on guard. And I'm going to want to do that with all of my fighters that are alive. And Faithful Reward is each surviving friendly fighter is inspired. So it's fired up, but it has to be the whole warband. Well, with the way that their inspire mechanic works, if one of them inspires, based on their inspire mechanic, they all inspire. So that's easy enough. And then I think the last one is keep chopping. And so I put that one in there because I want to shoot twice with Fecula anyway. Sepsimus has his sliding attack, so if I can get 2 people that I can get adjacent to, that works. And then I also have what I am going to argue is the upgrade with the best flavor text in the game. So I will read the flavor text, and then we'll talk about the upgrade. So the flavor text goes, hug, ha, ha, hueh. So, or as I like to interpret it, or that. So putrid vomit is the upgrade. It's a ranged attack upgrade for Fecula or Gulgach. Range 3 furies, 1 damage. But it's a ranged attack, and that makes, if you can get in the middle and turret your vomit everywhere, that's going to make keep chopping a little easier to score. So this is very similar to a deck that Jonathan Davis put together. But I've just made some changes based on kind of my own play style and stuff.
Yeah. So, so some key points there, like slow and purposeful. I think, at least once again, in my observations, this warband again kind of switches what our thought process has to be. It's not going to be the Grimwatch where they score 9 glory in a single phase. It's about being that slow, and you're not going to kill me. I'm not going to give up a lot, but I'm just going to build and build and build. And then by, round 3, I have my 14, 15, 16 glory.
Right.
Is that fair interpretation?
Yeah. So, the total glory for the deck is 14. I have Tome of Offerings in there, and that certainly helps. Crown of Avarice is in there, so that's going to help. But yeah, to your, 3-fighter warband, right? Unless somebody's got Tome and Trophy Belt, or Tome and another infaction, or Tome and Trophy Belt and another infaction, you're getting 3 glory for killing me. So even if you go full aggro, I'm not giving up loads of glory like Grimwatch or Thorns or Goblins do. But I think the real idea is that I just want to disrupt whatever it is that you're trying to do. So if you're trying to go for objectives, I'm going to try and remove those or be on them. so that you can't get on them. Or if you're going aggro, I'm just going to soak it, slow burn, and then as you come to me, I'm just going to hit back hard.
And how has that playstyle worked for you since you've switched to this? Well, I mean, what would you even classify it as? Is it like
Control.
like a control, like a hybrid, like
It's a control deck.
punch me?
So I think it's so flex is the overall like hybrid, right? So I think it is a flex where it's control aggro, because I do have things like Tome of Offerings. I've got Glory Seeker.
You're just controlling by removal is what you're doing.
Well, yeah, and that's actually a good point, that control doesn't necessarily mean just, controlling a deck or controlling.
Yeah, you're not just dictating the other person's deck, you're dictating the board state in any way you can, and that's
Right.
what control means.
Yeah. So that's a good point, Trace. So yeah, I think control is probably the best fit.
And I think where you really hit it the other night when we were testing this out was you made some fantastic decisions with board and objectives. So like walk through how you've grown to realize that that's probably more important with this warband than anything else.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so I think because the in-faction cards are not great, they do not have good in-faction objectives. So they're not looking at the same kind of in-faction objectives that, say, the Banshees are, or the Grimwatch are, or Stormcast, the Stormsires are. And they don't have the action economy of, say, the Thorns of the Briar Queen, where there are universal objectives that are easier for them to score. So, I mean, that's kind of precluded these, including all of these super easy to score, low glory objectives. But with good stat blocks, what you have to rely on is choosing boards well and making the decision when to choose objectives and when not to choose objectives. Or really, for me, it's been just where to place objectives. I think in every instance I have chosen, if I win the roll, then I will let my opponent put down boards. So I will give my opponent the objective so that I can choose the engagement. And what that lets me do is make sure that I line up not only my starting objectives, but your starting objectives in a way that's going to let me score the things that I need to score. So Fecula's score immediately, where she has to shoot twice. Keep chopping, where I can get in the middle. And then the other piece here, and this is something that, is talked about a little bit, but it hasn't been talked about a lot, because I think to date, when people are trying to disrupt objective-based warbands, they just want the objectives. So if somebody is going into Thorns, they're going to say, well, if I win the roll-off, I'm going to take the 3 objectives and my level of engagement be darned, right? Like I will eat the offset Molten Shard Pit if it means that I can hold on to the 3 objectives to prevent my opponent from scoring temporary victory or supremacy or the tactical supremacies, whatever the case is. I think the difference here is that these fighters don't have the in-faction ability to do that, so you have to look at board placement and objective placement and movement to do that piece of the game for you. So what I have started to do is really be thoughtful about where I put down my first or second objective in a way that disrupts what my opponent is trying to do and forces more objectives towards the midline. Because if I can get objectives either at or on the midline, it's a lot easier for me to even just move up and stand on them, which can be just as disruptive as them not being able to get to them, or even more so, because now they have to come in and engage and attack instead of being able to like double move to get to an objective, or push to get onto the objective.
What warband pushes a bunch of fighters?
Yeah, who would do that?
So, I mean, that's a lot of information on this warband. It's nice to see you passionate about a warband again. I don't think I've seen you this passionate about a warband except when Yathars were broken, but really, honestly, like since your Farce Riders, which kind of used to play the same way, like a denial style control. Yep. So what do you think is, I know there's one other version out there that you've experimented with. What do you think is the best way to play them? Like the way that we just went over, or do you think that it may push even elsewhere?
So I think that there's another build, and it's one that is, I think, going to be more difficult to do, which is why I haven't done it as much, because I just haven't had the time to put the thought into it that I would want. And I think that there's an objective around them holding 2 objectives that is going to give you a greater glory yield without worrying about killing fighters. And it's been talked about. So anybody that's in the Warhammer Underworlds Reddit Discord, if you go into the deck building channel there and just search for Wurmspat, you'll see conversations around kind of how to play the warband. And I've had conversations there and pulled from conversations on there. But I think there's one around holding 2. So there's holding 2 and then flipping, removing objectives. And so you're looking at uncontested, which is hold 2 or more objectives in an end phase, and your opponent holds none for 3 glory. There's coveted spoils, which I think we've talked about on the show before, but Trace has played around with Stormsires before, where coveted spoils is you score 3 glory if your warband holds all the objectives. Well, if there's only one objective on the board, that's correct. It's kind of easy to hold. And who doesn't want 3 glory for holding one objective? So that one's in there. And then you've got, your other kind of standard hold 2 objectives that are out there. So swift advance, hold 1 in your territory and enemy territory, and then path to victory, which is hold 2 objectives and have taken someone out of action. So if you do those, so uncontested is 3, coveted spoils is 3, swift advance, path to victory, those are both 2. So I mean that's 8 glory from 4 objectives. So if you take 8 other 1 glory easy to score objectives, you're looking at a 16 glory objective from a warband that can do a lot to disrupt other people's scoring. So it's still,
you're looking at my Mantrappers deck.
Yeah, which we're
going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah, so you're still not looking at scoring 23 glory, right? You're not trying to score supremacy and all the attack supremacies with keys and all of that stuff.
Correct.
But the idea, and this is to your point, this is what I did with my Farstrider warband. I think that my Farstrider warband, even in the heyday before restricted objectives, I want to say it probably only had like 15 glory in it. And the idea, and that was back when you could run combination strike and victory after victory. The idea was, I'm just going to make sure that you can't do whatever it is that you want to do. So that's in there. And then the 2 things that I haven't talked about, and these are ones that I haven't experimented with in great detail, is Tome of Glories. So if you're going to try to get on objectives anyway for uncontested or coveted spoils or swift advance or whatever, Tome of Glories is great, because spend an activation, get a glory. Like who's not going to spend an activation to gain a glory, right? I mean, that's basically what we're trying to do the whole game.
It is kind of how you win the game.
Yeah. And then Cryptic Companion, which is a new card. So Cryptic Companion is the formless key, but you score it every end phase, not just third end phase. So if you're sitting on an objective during an end phase,
at the end of an activation,
at the end of an action phase.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. At the end of the action phase.
Yeah. You get a glory. So if you get it on an objective in action phase 1 and you put that upgrade on, congratulations, you just got an extra glory. So I feel like that's probably the way that I'm going to lean. I think my issue with that is that it's going to require more thought. I'm going to have to think more moves ahead, because I have to be on objectives, and that's not a play style that I have played extensively
at all.
Reclaim the Lamentary.
Oh,
does that
wow.
count? Does that count?
1 card.
But I think that there's going to be more teeth in that style of play than in what I'm currently doing.
Cool. I would agree with that last statement. Like, it is not that type of playstyle is not something that you've done, and I personally would like to challenge you to play that more, because I think in Underworlds, the more you if you understand objective play, if you understand aggro play, control, flex, you're better equipped for the situation. And sometimes in this game, there can be, I don't want to call it a bad experience, but the most frustration is set in when you want to do a thing and someone stops you from doing the thing, right?
Right.
But the more education you have in play styles, it's easier to counter that thing. So I think it'd be a good challenge for you to learn the objectives, and it would be hard. So in closing on the Wurmspat, one piece of advice for anyone that wants to play them, because they are not the easiest, right? So
right. Yeah, I think it goes back to learn boards and objective placement, so that you can do what you need to do and disrupt what your opponent wants to do.
Well, fantastic.
Cool.
Any other pieces on Nurgle other than the models are amazing, and we didn't.
Oh my gosh, they're so good. Except for Seps. Well,
no, it's still amazing. It's just in its own way.
Let me put it this way: I have never, until I started painting this warband, actively gagged while painting a miniature. But poor old Sepsimus he needs to see.
Poor old Sepsimus.
He needs to go see a doctor.
What you're saying is that in the Undies voting of 2021, Sepsimus will have the best butt.
Yes.
Him and his Rosebud are going to win it all.
Rosebud.
Ooh.
A little more than a Rosebud.
Yeah, he's
a little more than a Rosebud, but that's okay.
Well, fantastic class. I'm glad we got to talk about
rectal.
This is what happens when you do this.
Yeah. All right, so moving right into Mantrappers. So Mantrappers, the second warband to come out, kind of has a Mollog look to it. So Trace has gravitated to him, and he's got a whole bunch of shenanigans. And this is where we're kind of flipped. I thought for sure Trace would be playing Nurgle, and I thought for sure Jared would be playing Mantrappers. But hey, that's okay. So Trace, what are your first impressions of the warband?
More involved than Mollog, which is good. Yeah. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. All the different. I think it's a more well-designed warband than Mollog was, because you actually kind of value the other fighters that are in the deck, that are in the warband. So, just looking at, we'll go through kind of some of the cards like we did with Jared and the Wurmspat. So, Hrothgorn Mantrapper, he's the star of the show, right? He's a 6 wound, 4 move, 1 shield fighter with a trap launcher action that is 3 hexes distance for 2 fury and 2 damage out of the box. And then you have the hunting knife, which is 1 hex away, 1 hex range, 2 hammers for 3 damage, which is just a tasty. He is a very well-rounded fighter. And then you have Thrafnir, which is his kitty cat, his saber tusk.
Thrafnir is best kitty. No
Thrafnir
question.
is best kitty, and possibly best puppy too.
You think he's better than Riptooth?
No, he's not better than Riptooth.
Riptooth is a dog. Riptooth is a doggo.
Riptooth is a demon.
Demon doggo.
Anyway,
so Thrafnir, he is 5 move out of the box with 2 dodge out of the box for 3 health, which is a nice mobile, still one-shottable fighter, but he can do some things that we'll talk about in just a minute. He has one range attack for 3 fury for 2 damage, and he can't, in typical pet fashion, he can't have weapon upgrades and stuff like that give him extra attack actions. You can boost his damage and stuff like that in his dice, but you can't give him a weapon. And then you have Lug It and Thwack, which basically allow you to always push your opponent. So whether you win the roll off against your opponent when you're hitting them, or when you lose the roll off, you can still push them. So they have a one hex attack for 1 smash, 1 damage. So the odds are high that you're going to lose that attack.
Killing it, those guys.
They are killing it. He's really beating his buddy over the head with his club.
It is worth noting that Lug It and Thwack, it is 2 Gnoblars.
They are stacked fighters. A Gnoblar on a Gnoblar.
It's the world's tallest Gnoblar.
Just because we're talking about Hex Ed does not mean that we're talking about it in that way. So they have a movement of 3, 1 dodge, 3 health. And they have a reaction. Well, they have their beaten club plus 1 dice if there are fewer than 2 wound tokens on this fighter card. So it starts out as a 2 smash attack, which is good. And then their reaction after this attack action, if there were fewer successes in the attack roll than the defense roll, push the target 1 hex. So like I said, you can always maneuver your opponent as long as they're not on guard, obviously. But if you miss and they're on guard, you can still push them.
That's pretty sweet.
Which is awesome. And then we get to Quiv. Quiv is a 3 hex move, 1 dodge, 2 health fighter with a range 1, 2 fury, 1 damage attack. And the cool little tidbit about him, and this is why I like the way this warband is designed, you can sit him next to Hrothgorn, and he gives Hrothgorn a 1 dice reroll on his trap launcher attack, which is like having a awakened weapon just out of the box if he's next to you.
Yeah, it's sweet. And so the Gnoblar's name is Quiv.
Yep.
And it looks like he's holding a spear, but it is not in fact a spear.
Nope.
It's a giant crossbow bolt.
That is correct.
So he is a Gnoblar who is also a quiver.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
And then finally we come to probably my favorite of all of them, which is Bushwhacka. And Bushwhacka is a 3 range move, 1 dodge, 2 health fighter, 1 range, 1 fury, 1 damage. Well, why is he good, you say? Well, I'll tell you. So Bushwhacka has a reaction that says, after an activation, if there is no friendly trap model on the battlefield, this fighter and if this fighter has no charge tokens, place a friendly trap model in any adjacent empty hex and give this fighter a charge token. If another fighter moves into, is pushed, or is placed into the trap hex, the fighter is dealt 2 damage and the trap is removed. So, interesting things about this. It's a reaction after any activation. So that means that if you're playing against Zarbag, you can block Snurk from getting inspired if you want to. Just little fun little things like that people may not think about. But there's some nasty little shenanigans you can do with this fighter that we can get into in just a minute. So that's their uninspired side. Inspired, they all gain various different things. Lug It and Thwack go to 2 fury on their attack, and they go to 4 move. Quiv gains a fury, gains a dodge, and goes to 4 move. Bushwhacka gains a move, gains a dodge, goes and gains a fury, as well. And then Hrothgorn goes to a 3 fury attack for his range 3 attack for 2 damage. And his hunting knife goes to 3 hammers for 3 damage. And he's a 4 move fighter with 2 shields when he's inspired. And then Thrafnir doesn't really gain a whole lot. He can he does gain a significant 2 things. He gains cleave, and he gains a reroll on 1 dice in his attack roll. So he gets an awakened weapon on his own, and he gets cleave. So all around, really solid fighters. And the one thing I didn't really touch on that's really kind of key to Hrothgorn is his trap launcher action. If he hits you with it, and causes damage, he can push you a hex. But when he's inspired, he can push you 2 hexes, as long as those hexes are closer to you. So, and it's a push, it's not a drive back. So this warband is all about maneuvering your opponent in places that you want them to go.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the key thing there, it's a reaction, so you don't have to do it.
correct.
So you could drive them back, or you could, drive them back and react and pull them forward, or just pull them forward. He also he makes everybody a quarry, which is different. So.
Yep. Which actually comes into play in some of the cards that I have in my deck too. So overall, his faction warband cards are actually really good. The
first really broken faction right out, like with too many surges. So you
correct.
Can't play. You can't play a championship event with their stock deck.
Nope. You gotta tweak it up a little bit. They ended up having 8 surges in their starting deck, which is just crazy. Some of them are more usable than others. But they have a lot of what I like about their objective deck is they give you probably 2 or 3 different ways to play them right out of the box. So like you can go full hog aggro with them if you want to. Butchering, score this in an end phase if there are more enemy fighters out of action than surviving enemy fighters for 2 glory. Then you have always moving. Score this in an end phase if there is at least 1 friendly fighter and there are no friendly fighters in your territory. So like everybody needs to be in the enemy territory for 2 glory. And then Hunter's Feast is one that really screams aggro, which is score this immediately when your leader's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action and your leader made 1 or more attack actions that took an enemy fighter out of action earlier in this phase. So you're rewarding yourself 2 glory for killing 2 fighters. So those are things that are not necessarily easy to do, but they lend themselves more towards the pure aggro build, which is not really the way that I'm rolling. But
so what decisions have you made? Because five model warband, so not the easiest to control with as far as activations go.
Correct.
And really from a stat line, I'm going to punch you. The Noblars are not there. They're like utility fighters that you have to be, not cautious, but pick your battles where you want to utilize them. So you basically have two fighters that are going to go in and punch somebody. So where did that lead you? And the other thing too is like, even though Hawthorne is like the main guy, has great range, he doesn't have any shenanigans where he can, charge multiple times or move and attack and stuff like that. So, or I'm sorry, charge and attack. So where'd you go with them?
So I went basically the same route that I had been playing my Stormsire's Cursebreakers, which Jared kind of took a little notes from, I guess, with his faction deck too. And what I've had the most fun with this expansion is trying to deny objective warbands what they want to do, not by getting on those objectives or killing fighters, but by completely obliterating the objectives themselves. So I'm manipulating the board state by removing those objectives or flipping them underneath you or before you get to them. And I have more ways to do that than pretty much almost any other warband in the game. So there's one card that really threw me down the rabbit hole with this that he has in his faction deck. It's called Arm of the Everwinter. And it says, Surge. Score this immediately when your warband removes a feature token from the battlefield or flips a feature token. So that I was like, okay, cool. Like they have a way to kind of score glory based on objective removal, which is what I like to do anyway. And then you get a little further in, and they have a ploy, which is Frozen Earth. Pick a feature token in a hex that contains or is adjacent to your leader. Remove it from the battlefield. Okay, cool. All right, that's cool. And then so I was like, well, I've already got some other cards that I was playing in my Stormsire's Cursebreakers deck. So I had Unexpected Peril, which is pick a feature token in an empty hex in your territory. Flip that token. So you don't have to be close to it. Somebody can like charge in and like try and get on it. You can just be like, nope, flip, and it's not an objective anymore. But one card that came out in the Wurmspat deck too that really pushed me down it was Leave Nothing to Chance, which is basically pick one feature token that contains a friendly fighter, remove that token from the battlefield. So now I have two ways of removal, and then I have other ways of flipping over objectives based on the warbands cards themselves. So Bushwhacker has a specific ploy for himself. It's called More Traps. Pick one feature token in a hex that contains or is adjacent to a friendly Bushwhacker. Flip that token. So you don't have to be on it. So I could charge, right? I could charge, or I could move, and I move right next to the objective that you're on, and I flip it from underneath you. Or I move it, or I flip it over before you get to it. So unless you're taking into flipping those objectives back, a lot of them, it's going to be really hard for you to score some of those 3 objective scores. And I know that like some of them are going to like, there's nothing you can really do if Grimwatch has temporary victory or something like that on the first turn and they have 3 objectives. Like it's just really, really difficult to handle that anyway. And so I'm not even worried about, like, if I can get that off and remove that middle objective to where you can't score that super easy, that's great. If not, it's fine.
Okay. So wait. So let me get this right. So Unexpected Peril.
Yep.
Flipping a feature token in
your territory.
Okay.
Correct.
And then there's the Hrothgorn specific ploy, and he has to be on or adjacent.
Yep.
And then there's the Bushwhacker ploy where he has to be on it or adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you could, in theory.
The other one that's removed too.
And then Leave Nothing to Chance was just remove if you're on it.
Right. But I'm saying in theory, with the perfect draw.
Yep.
You could start with 3 objectives in your starting territory.
And then have none. Correct. That is
because
correct.
you could put both Hrothgorn and Bushwhacker next to objectives and do it.
Correct.
And with those 3 ploys, 4 ploys in your deck, there's a good chance that you're going to have one of them in your starting hand.
Which is why I have them all in my deck.
Yeah. So you're almost guaranteed to remove at least one objective.
First turn.
First
activation potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And then you go even further, which I tend to do.
Right.
And I put in Lethal Snares in the deck. So I have Lethal Snares in, which is reaction. After this fighter ends a push or move action in a hex that contains a feature token or is placed in a hex that contains a feature token, flip that token. So, ideal world, right? I'm putting that on Thrafnir with his 5 move, and I just run into enemy territory and jump on.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's awesome.
And flip, done. Like, now you got to remove me, and I'm on a lethal hex. So, there's just, fun little things like that, right? So, now that I've gone down, probably where many people have gone, I'm not giving myself, like, all the credit for thinking that this is a unique way to play, right? But, so, another card that came out in this set that I found truly, truly interesting was Perfect Match, right? So Perfect Match scores in an end phase if you have scored 10 or more objectives. I was like, I wonder what would happen if I just put like super easy objectives in for everything else just about. So we'll go through my objective deck for my Hrothgorn's Mantrappers. So obviously I have my 6 surges, just like everybody really should if you're trying to, maximize your efficiency, right? So, and because I was trying to think of things that are super easy to score, I put in, first one was calculated risk. Second one, scorched earth. I have 2 ways to remove objectives completely. So I put scorched earth in. Arm of the Everwinter, which is the one where you flip or where you remove or you flip, right? So now my brain is thinking, I'm only ever using frozen earth and leave nothing to chance if I have scorched earth in my hand, right?
Right.
Because the other one I can just flip a token and get. Then I have unexpected cunning, which is probably one of the easiest objectives to score in the game, which is surge. Score this immediately after playing your third or subsequent power card in the same phase.
Yeah, that's
Wait, you said power card?
Power card.
Oh, not ploy like everybody else. Gee,
No.
golly oh my.
Yeah, power card.
No, and so this gets into like the mechanic where like being able to score glory in the power step is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not spending activations to score it.
Correct. So then we get a little further, and you know how I kind of casually mentioned that Thrafnir moves 5, right? Right out of the box, he moves 5, so I put Gather Momentum in. So now I have an automatic way to score Gather Momentum out of the box as long as Thrafnir's alive.
Nice.
You know, just like the bats. 2 can play at this game, Grimwatch. And then finally, because we're going to have so many lethals all over the place, I put in Unexpected Pitfall. You know, we talked about that with Jared's stuff. So you're trying to either kill somebody with a ploy or kill somebody with a lethal hex. Well, I have a ton of ways to push you around, and I also have a bunch of different plink things that I can put into this deck, right? So I'm using my lack of, like, there's only like really one card in here that requires me to interact with you and kill you, which is that one. And then I was like, okay, so what are some easy in-phase objectives that I could go through? So I put in Frugal, because I could sit on 3 glory if I have a couple things in my hand. The only time this would ever really have a problem is if I'm scoring something like Unexpected Cunning, and then I draw into Frugal, but I had to spend one of those glory to put on an upgrade. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah, Frugal is a card that's been popping up more and more. And, a lot of people used to use like Opening Gambit, or or the one where you score 3 glory in the same phase. I forget.
Solid Gains.
Solid Gains.
You're just talking about the next 2 cards in my deck, Jason.
But like for the thing with Frugal is you can control it. So
you can score the other 2.
Yeah, the other ones are good, but like you can consciously make the decision of I'm not going to spend glory to score.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep. The only time it really kind of bites you is if you draw into it after you score a surge, right? So you score your surge, but the only time that really, really bites me in this deck is if I'm trying to score Unexpected Cunning and I use one of my glory to put an upgrade on, right? So that's the only time I've really come across that really kind of can nip you a little bit. And then I have Opening Gambit, just like you said, because some of all these other objectives are really, really easy to score. And then I have Solid Gains. Then I also put in, because Hrothgorn has a range 3 attack and a range 1 attack, that he's wanting to kill you, because that's the way that the Warband inspires, is by killing a fighter next to Hrothgorn. It doesn't have to be his attack. A fighter just has to die next to him. So I put in Versatile Fighter, which is a throwback, right? Score this in an end phase if the same fighter made both an attack action with range 1 or 2 and an attack action with a range of 3 or more in the preceding action phase. I'm probably going to activate Hrothgorn twice anyway in my turn, if I'm being realistic, unless I'm trying to do something else.
You can suck them into you too, right? So.
Correct. Yep. So if they're 2 X's away, I shoot them with my crossbow. If I miss, fine. It's fine. I'll just charge the next turn. If I hit you, and I get to pull you close to me, now I can just hit you without having to put a charge token on myself. So, and then we get to the other tech that Jared talked about, which is coveted spoils. All these objectives are going to be gone for the most part. So I'll try and hold one. Sure. And with some of the other cards that are in here, I think it's a good card to have. And then finally I have perfect match. So that puts my glory total for my objective deck at 17.
So, I mean, perfect match is a commitment because you can only ditch one objective the entire game.
Yep.
But you definitely have some easy scores if the cards come out in your power deck. So.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll move on to gambits, and I'm actually running 11-11, which I've been doing a lot this season just because there's so many cards that I like. And with this warband, I think you can find uses for those cards. So I have the things that I've been thinking about with my power deck is ways that I can gain movement and get more activations out of Hrothgorn if I need to, and ways to manipulate the board state further, right? So we've already gone through a lot of the ploys, which were the ones that helped me score those removal objectives are Frozen Earth, more traps, leave nothing to chance, and unexpected peril. All 4 of those are in my deck. So that's 4 slots taken. And then the rest of my gambits are Commanding Stride. It's very unlikely that I'm going to get domed turn 1 with Hrothgorn, so I'm probably going to have an opportunity to do this and get more centrally placed or move back. Jason and I played a game, and I actually used this to kind of move back into my own territory without making a move action, which helped me score some other stuff too. And then I also put in a card that doesn't get played a lot, but because of the way that the fighters are in this warband, and how tempting of targets they can be, I put in countercharge, right? So fighter makes a charge action. As long as I catch this before the move's over, I can be like, okay, countercharge, cool. So you charge my Noblar that I put up front to go do something. Well, as long as I keep Hrothgorn, which has to be present in my mind, right? I have to keep Hrothgorn 3 hexes away. If I can keep Hrothgorn 3 hexes away, or Thrafnir for that matter, 3 hexes away, I can push them towards you, and then so I can get a support whenever, either way, whoever you're attacking, I gain a support, and then also I have the opportunity after that charge action to attack you with whoever, right? So that's why that's in there. And then I have start with plink damage to kind of get towards unexpected pitfall, which is lethal ward. And then I also have pit trap, and then I have collapse, and I have snare. So those are the 3 direct damage or 4 direct damage ploys that I have. And then I also I had Dragged into the Darkness into the deck, and it's just a little too situational. Jason and I talked about it a while back. It's just a little too situational. And with all the positioning that I want to keep doing, I just put in distraction, just plain old distraction. Because I can push you into lethal. I can push you off of an objective that I want to be on to roast. Just a little bit more reliable way to get you around the board. And then upgrades, I have Potion of Rage, just because anytime you want to roll dice, it's better to have more. And then I have Tome of Offerings for ways to kind of catch up if I need to, or just gain a little bit more glory differential if I'm trying to pull ahead. And then I have Savage Instinct, which is a Hrothgorn specific card, which is this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions have ensnare. There's a lot of dodge out there right now, isn't there?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you would be uninspired, 2 fury, 2 damage, but against a 1 or 2 dodge with ensnare.
Only range in 1 and range 2.
Oh, only range 1 and range 2.
Okay. Yeah. Not that good.
Okay. Oh,
Not
not that good. I was about to say that's banana pants, but not like. I mean, that's huge against thorns. It's huge against banshees. It's huge against
Yep.
goblins. Like all these people that are going to 2 and 3 dodge.
And then you can also, if you're feeling like you want to be a super versatile fighter, right? You can put it on Thrafnir, and he's inspired, and he has cleave and ensnare. So.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, it's cute. You're on guard. I'm gonna come get you.
Yeah.
So then other utility things that are in the deck, I have great speed, great strength, because going to 4 damage with Hrothgorn or going to 3 damage with Thrafnir is good. And then I have the the highlight of the upgrade deck, in my opinion, which is Hunter's Reflexes. So Hunter's Reflexes, it's amazing, especially on Hrothgorn. So you give it to Hrothgorn, and every fighter is a quarry. So I don't know if anybody's used this card or not, but this fighter is a hunter. Well, I already am. That's cool. Reaction. Use this after an enemy fighter's activation. If that fighter is a quarry, push this fighter 1 hex closer to that enemy fighter. So after every activation, it's a lot of free movement. If it's on at the beginning of the turn, I get 4 free hexes of movement every turn.
And it blocks every after activation.
Every after activation.
Reaction.
Yes.
So it's going to block the Ripa Snarlfang's bites.
Correct.
It's going to block Pit Trap.
Correct.
It's going to block an opponent Bushwhacker.
That's correct.
It's going to block Snark Inspire.
Mm-hmm.
And
if Lady Harrow goes,
it's going to block hers.
It'll block hers, but that's...
Well, that would be her. It would be her reaction, but it's also going to block all of the Ylthari reactions.
Correct.
Because those are all after reactions. Wow.
I mean, because you see a lot of those.
Yeah, all the Yltharis out there.
So that's like my favorite card in the upgrade deck.
I don't know. That seems pretty good.
It's pretty good. And then we have Lethal Snares, which I already talked about. And then we get to some faction specifics, which are just so good. Massive Bulk. This warband has an in-faction sudden growth. -2 move, +2 wounds. If I have this on and I have on Hunter's Reflexes, I don't care.
Yeah, you're scooting closer anyway.
Yeah. And I have the option to move, right? I don't have to use that reaction. So, like, if I'm going to be pulled farther away by somebody else's action that is from what I really want to do, I'm not going to react to it. Toughened Hide. This is just restricted to a hunter. There are 2 hunters in this warband. One is Thrafnir. One is Hrothgorn. When this fighter is dealt damage, reduce that damage by 1.
Gross.
And then one of my other things in this deck that I feel is kind of necessary to kind of help keep the deck moving correctly is one that's a Hrothgorn or Noblar specific card, which is action. It's called Veteran Hunter. Action. Draw up to 2 power cards. How many times have you drawn a power card, Jared?
I mean, probably once per action phase with 3 fighters.
Correct. So wouldn't it be nice to use that action to draw 2 instead?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's pretty sweet. And then finally we have Trophy Belt, because since everybody that I'm fighting is a quarry, that sweet, sweet unspent glory from Trophy Belt.
Nice.
So that's the deck.
Well, and so that pairs nicely with Frugal, right? Because most people, that if they're running Trophy Belt, right, you're getting spent glory. So you're like, oh, great, I killed 2 people, but I only got unspent glory from that. Or I got spent glory from that.
Yep.
That's nice. I like that.
Yep. So that's the...
So how does it play? Like a great deck analysis.
Plays great.
And
it plays great into warbands that actually want to do something with objectives, but when I'm playing a mirror match, not necessarily in warband, but in theme,
mm-hmm.
It's very difficult.
So
It's harder to play.
Like elaborate. So if you're
So if I'm playing Jared,
like Grimwatch,
if I'm playing Grimwatch, it kind of works the way I want it to, right? Which is I'm winning through glory denial. So I'm trying to remove those objectives and keep you from scoring all your crazy burst glory at the end of the phase. It works. Like it's
plus
Jason,
the easy kills and stuff like that.
Plus the easy kills with the trophy belt and with Tome of Offerings, it allows you to play multiple different ways, which is really good. I played one game against Jared, it was a very close game. Like it came down to literally the last die roll of the game, but it was a much harder and much different game to play. Because his deck is geared to do a lot of the same things that I'm geared to do, which is remove those objectives, get on them, and just try and play that denial. Which it didn't impact me as much as it would an objective-based warband, but the games that I played against him, it really kind of showed like, okay, if you're playing against somebody like this, you're going to have to kind of probably lean a little bit more aggro than just trying to do your thing, right? Because the best part about this deck is I can choose how I want to engage my opponent for the most part. And in my game with Jared, one, I made a really ballsy move at the beginning of the game to keep 4 upgrades for whatever reason. It's because I had a really, really easy, I had calculated risk in my hand. I was like, okay, I can get one of these out of my hand. It's not a problem. See what else we draw, right? It's fine. Like, I don't really think the game necessarily came down to that. But anyway, so that's
So I think Wurmspat are a tough matchup for them because
they are. Because I do low amounts of damage.
Right, they're not as easy to farm.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep, it's just a harder matchup in general. I think against some of the other three fighter warbands, they'd be okay. But Wurmspat in particular, because of the damage reducing mechanic, I think that they're a harder fight to win.
Oh, I mean, there were definitely 2 or 3 attacks in there where I should have died that I didn't because I rolled a shield.
Correct.
Yep.
Which is fine. Like it's what they're designed to do. So like,
yeah,
it didn't phase me as much as like I'd much rather you roll a shield, Jared, than roll a crit on me.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed playing them so far. I need to test the deck a little bit more, especially now that I made the couple tweaks that I have, with like swapping out distraction and doing some other stuff. But yeah. So overall, really pleased so far.
You think that a good analysis, a gist of the way that Mantrapper should play is like they're going to play really good into the quote unquote top tier meta, like large warband.
Yeah.
Can kind of like control objective play, but when you go up against a similar like 3 warband 4 wounds like a Stormsire or I can't even think of anybody else because Stormsire is the thing, but or Wurmspat, like this type of deck build is going to struggle.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it would struggle. I just think you're just going to have to adjust what you want to do. But I wouldn't necessarily say struggle because there's enough flexibility in the deck that I think that you should be able to pull it out not without much of an issue, but you're going to have to use your brain more, but it's still doable. Struggle to me means that you are up against the ropes just by matchup alone. The matchup for this, the only one that really does probably pose a hard counter is Wurmspat for them. And that's just because of the nature of the fighter cards and the nature of what they want to do with the current way that people are trying to play them.
Yeah. And then what about the additional, like, Quiv and Bushwhacker? Like, are there additions to the warband? Are they more gimmick, or you found that they're very helpful?
I mean, I think that they're helpful. With the way they're going to catch people off guard, which is a good and a bad thing, right? So a lot of people are just going to focus directly on Hrothgorn and be like, okay, I've got to kill him. Like he's the money, right? Or other people are going to say, okay, well, I'm going to kill all the nobblers because they're easier to kill. But I think that you can come at people with different angles with the warband, which I like. Nobody's going to see that Luggett and Thwacka coming at them and then missing their attack on one, and they have 1 health left, and they're like, oh, well, why'd you do that? Like, and I'm like, okay, well, I just get to push you now into this lethal, and then I score unexpected pitfall. Like, there's just little things like that that people aren't going to really suspect that you can do, and people are like, oh, shit. And then there's all the shenanigans you can do with Hrothgorn where he's maneuvering you around. It's not something that you need to focus on, in my opinion. Like, it's not something that you should heavily invest in, like pushing people around with Hrothgorn's attack and stuff like that. I think that can get you in trouble with trying to focus too much on your positioning to pull somebody into a lethal. I think if you get caught doing that, you're gonna focus too much on that and not.
You're gonna get pushed into a lethal yourself. Is what's gonna happen.
Correct. Yeah. But one of the benefits of playing a deck like this is that you present more opportunities for those lethals to be used. Because you're flipping over objectives, you're removing those objectives. And with all the different cards, people like to play on the perimeter. And so, Collapse is a great card, which will be restricted, I'm sure. But I think it's got a really nice flexible play style, which is something that I'm trying to be more open to this season. Because last season, and probably a season before that, I pretty much exclusively played run in, kick your teeth in. If it didn't work, oh well. Like, that's kind of how my brain functioned. But Jason, you seemed like genuinely excited whenever I posted this deck the first time. You were like, oh, dude.
I mean, it speaks to me because it's flex. Like, it is 100%, I'm going to deny what you want me to do. And then at the same time, I still think there's enough teeth in there to go to punch someone. And that's the way I like to play. Like, I like to dictate, what's going on. The episode's about critiquing the warband, but I'd almost challenge to put in Blazing Soul in there, just that way you control his inspiration and make him even more dangerous as he goes.
Yep.
So, but what are any pit traps that any pit traps of the warband that you would just want the new pilot to be aware of, or do you think it's well rounded enough of just play the way you want to play?
I think having experience playing Monologue and thinking more about your activations with one particular fighter has kind of helped me a little bit. I've seen many Monologue players that'll just be like, I'm going to charge. No, don't do that. Like, you have to really think through. It's kind of the chess game that Jared was talking about, right? Especially with Coveted Spoils in the deck. Like, I have to really think about which objectives I'm removing at a given time, because I want to trick you, right? I want to trick you into being like, okay, cool, I've got my supremacy in the bag, right? But I'm sitting there waiting. I'm waiting on you to do that. And then once you get there, then that's when I, hopefully can pounce and be like, all right, well, that one's gone. And now you've wasted all this whole turn trying to score, supremacy or whatever. And it's not there. So it's a little bit more of it's a cat and mouse game. That's something to look out for. So if you're trying to play something like this, you have to really kind of think not so much about just what you want to do, but what your opponent's trying to do. which can be difficult. And then the other things that I would say would be just be cautious about how you place yourself, because even though you have 6 wounds, you're gonna feel invincible, but you're not. And it's very, very easy for, two relatively decent fighters that have, you could be charged by Rastus and Amos, and they have like pit trap in their hand, and Amos is inspired. Well, Amos does 3, and then Rastus charges in with cleave and does 2. Oh, pit trap, you're dead. Like, it's easier to lose him than you think. So just be cautious with that. Don't be overly aggressive with him unless you know for sure you have what you need to do in your hand.
Yeah, and even more so in the playstyle that you're going for. Remember, every warband can do 4 damage at least once or twice, right? Like that's kind of the magic number. But when you have that many lethals set up, that means they're doing at least 5, and then with plink damage, they can probably do 6.
They can get rid of you. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, great advice. Great faction breakdown. And with that class, we've done Sprung the Trap, and you all have Clap, and we'll move on to the next. Move on to the next subject. But we're going to take a quick break here before we get into just defining the universals. So we'll be right back. All right, welcome back from that quick, short commercial break. Thanks for listening to our sponsors, all 0 of them.
What's going to be really funny is like one day when we strike it rich with this podcast, which we're not going to do, just to be clear, is I'm going to go back and edit in commercials. And so that joke is going to make no sense.
Amazing.
No, you're not. You're not going to edit. That's not you. So,
anyway,
just want to thank you guys for breaking down, the wonderful 2 new factions. Want to close out the episode and talk of just a few universals. A lot of them we did mention throughout the episode of being kind of incorporated into these new decks. But I do think that some of them take some time just to make sure that they're individually mentioned, that our players and listeners out there don't leave these out. So the first one for me that I think is the best card out there in the new decks, it comes in the Mantrappers, is Buried Instincts. We did talk about it's a reaction. Play this during an enemy fighter's attack action that targets a friendly fighter before the attack roll, right? So blocks a window there. Give that friendly 1 guard token. If that friendly fighter is a quarry, you can also reroll 1 dice in the defense roll. So this card, it gives you guard, right? Like, a lot of the 2 dodge warbands, it's a huge, huge card. But more importantly, your opponent doesn't know it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what's set up here is they charge in, they think they're going to kill you with snare, pit trap, something to push you back into a lethal, and you bust this out
onto an edge hex and play collapse.
Yeah, and you rain on their parade by going on guard, right?
Yep.
So very, very versatile card. I expect to see it in almost everyone's deck. It does it does hit aggro again, but the nice thing is it's a ploy and can only be used once. But Lord knows how many times I've been burned by survival instincts thinking I could push somebody and I couldn't. So be on the lookout for that. Trace, like you had one that you're talking about during the break. You want to talk about that one?
Oh yeah, it's probably a little bit more of a fringe card. But for somebody who's running something like I'm running, where you're going to be turning a lot of objective tokens into lethal hexes and stuff, I think Vicious Beast is an interesting card. What that card does is says place a scatter token on a lethal hex, then do the following twice. Scatter 1 from that hex. Any fighter in the end hex has dealt 1 damage. So, it's not a guaranteed damage card, but it's a cool way to potentially pull 2 wounds off of a fighter if you get a little lucky. So it's, with all the warbands that want to get close to objectives these days, if you go in and you flip one on them really quick before they get on it, you can potentially do a quick 2 damage to them. So
yeah, well, cool. So another one from an objective standpoint, team effort, I think, is almost an auto include with 3-figure warband fighters.
Yep.
Or even 4. It is such an easy end phase scoring. That is, if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving fighter made 1 or more actions. Jared talked about it in his Nurgle review.
Yeah, it's a good card.
It's such a good easy score for an end phase.
Makes me want to go back to Stormsire, but I'm not doing that.
Oh, they're so good.
They are so good. They just got better.
Unexpected Pitfall. We did touch on this one too. Once again, a surge in a hybrid score this immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action by a lethal, or an enemy fighter is taken out of action by damage dealt by a gambit you played. Key thing here is gambit. So it's not very often that we've seen snare or pit trap doing the damage by them where you're going to score a glory. It's nice to have the lethal, but on top of that, any spell gambits that you play that do plink damage also can score this card. So watch out, folks. Unexpected Pitfall will probably be in every hybrid style deck, a flex deck, and aggro deck. Jared, do you have any cards you want to talk about?
So you talked about, you just said it, and then I lost it. The objective, the team effort. I like it. Yep. And then Unexpected Pitfall. I'm trying to think if there were any standout new ones. Wild Form. No, stop, Trace. Just let it go. Stop trying to make Wild Form a thing.
Collapse is one that we
Collapse is good. Yeah. So Collapse is. So it's a gambit ploy. Pick 3 edge hexes in a single group, with each hex in the group adjacent to at least one other hex in the group, and all in one player's territory. Each fighter in a hex you pick is dealt 1 damage. So it's Encroaching Shadow, except it can't be played on fighters that are in no man's land, but you could hit up to 3 fighters with it. And this is great because it pairs quite nicely also with Encroaching Shadow and with Lethal Ward, because some people like to hide objectives in the corner in the back, and then they put the Widow Katha on them, and even though she's inspired, you could...
He's never experienced this, folks, ever.
Lethal Ward, Collapse, and Encroaching Shadow, and just
need
take
2 of those, though, for Widow.
Well, I'm saying she was inspired.
Oh.
I just always assume that whenever I'm fighting the Mournflight that they'll be inspired magically somehow. So yeah, so I like that one. And then I'm trying to think. Leave Nothing to Chance, which we've brought up.
Big card for the way that we seem to be gravitating to play.
So. Well, and I think it also helps aggro warbands just in general, because not only can you charge and sit on an objective, but you can just say, no, I'm just going to remove this. So now you could charge onto a semi-forward objective, especially if you have like a faster fighter like
Garrick.
Like Garrick.
Sure.
Yes. I was
actually am flirting with the idea of a.
Well, they have an in-faction one too, don't they? Don't they have a remove?
Yeah.
But I was thinking even like your faster, numpty fighters like Legane or
Garrick.
Or Garrick. Yeah, or Garrick.
Or Sake.
But you can charge onto an objective and then remove it. And so now, you may have a situation where you are looking at, you're playing into Grimwatch or playing into Thorns, and they've got the 3 objectives, but you happen to have Spectral Wings or something, and you can make it onto one, and then it's gone. So now you're forcing them to come to you, which is great. And then the other one, and this is just a personal pick, I don't think it's going to be critical for most warbands, but it's maybe. So Lucky Escape. Reaction: play this when a friendly fighter is dealt 1 damage precisely. That damage is not dealt to them. So this is critical. It's going to block Pit Trap. It's going to block Collapse. It's going to block Lethal Ward. the thing that's really nice for the Wurmspat is, let's say you're going to get hit by 3 damage attack, and I roll 2 shields. Well, I've reduced that to 1, and that's the most that I can reduce it by. Well, now I play Lucky Escape, and I have negated the attack, which also means that the attack fails. So, like, it keys off of a lot of things. So that's another one that, but it's also a way, like, to keep a fighter alive that's on 1 health that somebody just either pushed into a lethal hex or pit trapped or snared.
That's a dirty Johnson.
Oh.
Well, this is Hex Ed, so we have to talk about all types of Johnsons.
You should always wash your Johnson.
Yes.
All right. So on that note, I have 2 more. I have Amberbone Dagger. I like this. I just like this one because it takes me back to like Godsworn. Like Godsworn need a cleave in order to score wood armor in case they lose their 2 other fighters. Even though it's on a crit, I like the fact that I can give somebody a weapon upgrade that has a chance of getting cleave on 3 dice. And then if you take that fighter out, you get an extra glory. So the Amber Bones are definitely some of the best weapons we've seen from that utility. Mm-hmm. But I want to end the episode on the card Nightmare in Shadows. So Nightmare in the Shadows is yet another distraction. So the gift pack brought back distraction. A lot of other warbands have in-faction style distractions, and now we've added a universal of choose 1 enemy fighter and push that fighter 1 hex. I think it's been well documented on other media outlets for Underworlds. Oh, look, we have so many distractions, so many pushes, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I'm here to say that having 2 distractions or 3 distractions is good. So, for the last X amount of months, there's been this rumbling in the community that Grimwatch, Thorns, all these objective-based warbands seem to be dominating. But then we're going to complain when we get another card that will help us push people off of objectives. Now, I understand with Thorns, you have to pick the right time to play it against them because they will just Varkloff push them back on. I'm sorry, it's Thorns. But against any other matchup, you're pushing fighters to get them off of objectives, making them spend ploy cards to get back on those objectives, especially if you wait till after they made a move action. Now, does it completely break it? No, and it shouldn't. Grimwatch have many counters to running the double distraction. Lady Hawthorne, everybody has counters to run these distractions, but having 2 of them gives certain warbands the tools they need to just close the gap a little bit, in my opinion. And it also helps aggro by closing distance on charges. So, take a step back, breathe, and run 2 distractions.
I like it.
Class dismissed. All right, we'll be right back with the outro.
And we're back, and with the class dismissed, we will close out the show. So this has been episode 21, Hex Ed, Flies Spread Diseases, so keep your flies shut.
Just so everyone knows, it's a quote from the movie documentary Band of Brothers. Like, it's not an original, so
okay.
Put that.
All right, fair. So as always, we want to say thanks for listening. If you can log on, get on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or your listening platform of choice and leave us those 5-star reviews. It'll hit the algorithms and allow other people to find us. If you want to follow us on socials, we're Battle Mallet Podcast on Facebook, Battle Mallet PCast on Instagram, Battle Mallet 1 on Twitter. And you're free to reach out to any of those channels if you have questions or comments. If you just want to hit us up. We have a Discord, and the links for all of those will be in the show notes. For anyone that's not aware, the Nova Open primers for most of the events are online, so I will try to put a link to the newsletter in the show notes as well, so you can start to take a look at the schedule. We didn't talk about that. That's probably going to be the bulk of our next episode, is talking about the schedule of the events that we're planning on attending, maybe classes that we're planning on attending. And as the show moves forward in this season, we're going to try to have guests who are either planning on attending or teaching or running an event at Nova, just to engage with Nova more. So you guys can look forward to that. Yeah, that's it. So Wurmspat, just spreading disease, grandfather's blessings, Frothgorn,
Being fat.
being fat and eating things and flipping your objective tokens into lethal hexes, and
Damn objectives.
Yep. And run 2 distractions. I think those are our lessons for the day. So without Danny, we're just 3 dads.
This is true.
Yeah.
And an absent Danny.
3 dads and yep. So this is Jared signing out.
This is Trey signing out.
I'm Jason Table New Murray. Get the hell out of here.
Run 2 distractions.
Peace.
The Battle Mallet podcast is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find more information via links on podcast.battle-mallet.com. Music by Anno Domini Beats.
It's just like
Ugh.